Our application is taking shape, or to be precise, it already had shape, but we're moving more and more of the logic into NGRX. With the auth and the shopping list area finished, only the recipes remain. And of course, we still have that data storage service. But let's focus on that in a second step. First of all, let's take a step back and let's work on our development experience a little bit. Thus far, we had a look at NGRX, where we were using it, but wouldn't it be nice if you could sometimes look into it and have a nice log of the different actions that are being dispatched and which data they carry and how they change your global application store? Well, you can have a look at this with a special development tool which you can install. For this, search for Redux DevTools extension, and you should find this GitHub repository here, which is about the Redux DevTools extension, and NGRX is compatible with that. And you can follow that link to find a page with instructions on how to install it in Chrome or Firefox. So I'm using Chrome, so I will go to the Chrome Web Store on the page of that package. And I already have added it. If you haven't, simply click the installation link, which you should find here. Now, that is basically all you need to do then. You have installed that. You don't need to follow any other steps here. You just need to go to that Chrome store and install it from there. Once you have that installed, you can install a special package in your project with npm install and now -- save dev, because that will be a development only dependency. And there, this is at ngrx / store -devtools. Now let's restart ngserve. And to use that part and use it together with the installed extension, you now have to go to the app module. And there, after creating your store module, you now can register a new module, which is unsurprisingly imported from that newly added package. So we just added ngrx / store devtools. From that package, you can install, or you can import the store devtools module. Now with that import added in the imports of your app module, store devtools module, like this, and call instrument on it. Now, instrument takes an object where you can configure this, and there is one configuration which I want to add, and that is log only, which I want to set to environment, and environment is now getting imported from our environments folder. So there, actually, let me navigate there manually. One level up, then into the environments folder, and then the environment file, not from the environment.prod file, but just from the environment file. In there, in that environment file, we have a production property in that constant, in that environment constant. And that is false during development, but in the prod file, it is true. And as you learned, these two files are swapped automatically by the CLI once you build for production. So this environment constant has this production property, which is false during development, but true during production. And therefore, with log only, we're basically restricting the output to only some log messages when we're in production. With that added, you can save your application and now go back to it and maybe restart your browser after the installation of that Chrome extension or of that Firefox extension. And you should then find a Redux element here in your browser developer tools. And in there, that's pretty nice, you now have a detailed log of what's happening in your application. If I reload, for example, we see which actions are getting dispatched here. We see the auth auto login, dummy, and if you scroll up, by the way, you see there are some initialization actions being dispatched as well. And you might recall that I mentioned these initialization actions earlier in this module. This is important for your state getting initialized. So there we see what was getting dispatched. We see what the state looked like after that dispatch. you see which action that was, and you see more information about that action. For example, you can see more information once I do log in. Now you see login start was dispatched. This had a payload. That payload was the email and password. And we see that the state here was at this point of time when it was dispatched that the user was basically null. But then for login, once this is done, that's the state after this action has been performed. But for login start, the user obviously still was null, but loading was true. And after login, the state was such that we had a user and loading was set back to false. So here you can now really dive into the different steps that are being executed in your application. You can learn more about what's going on. You can simply play around with that and get an overview of which actions were dispatched and how they affected the state, which state updates were made, and so on. And you can even go back in time and replay your application at different points of time and simply play around with that a bit to simulate different states and, most importantly, to get a feeling for what NGRX is doing behind the scenes. Now, with the Store DevTools added, I can also show you another package that might come in handy in some application. And for that, I quit my ngserve process, and again, I will install it with npm install -- save, and then it's ngrx at ngrx/router store. Now that's also an official package, part of the NGRX suite, and that helps you with reacting to routing actions. It basically dispatches some actions automatically based on the Angular router, and that would allow you to then write code in your reducer or with NGRX effects that runs when such a routing action occurs. For that, let me restart ngserve and let me show you how to add this. Now for adding this NGRX router actions functionality, we will have to add another import, unsurprisingly, where you again import something from that newly added @ngrx router store package. And that something here is the store router connecting module. And you add that after your store module and so on. Here you add your store router connecting module for root, just like this. You don't need to pass any arguments to for root. And now with that added, if you save everything and you go back to your application, let it reload, now you see there are more actions being dispatched. We have the router store request, router store navigation, and if you have a look at these actions, you see they have a payload. For example, here for router store navigation, we get the router state, we get the URL we're trying to navigate to, and we get detailed information about our routing action, and also once this is done. Now, we don't need this in our application, but of course, if you're building an app, this could be convenient and could give you a quick and easy way of reacting to different routing events and different data attached to these events.